Hello, everyone. It's Junie checking back in with all of you. I wanted to take a peek at President Biden and President Trump's astrology. I don't want to get political. I want to be very neutral. I know a lot of people have heated emotions about both of these men. People who know me know that I am not crazy about either. I'm not crazy about either side, okay? I'm kind of disappointed in both sides. So I can put a period there. I'm just trying to look at the astrology, and I just want to look at them as two older men that are going to the doctors, okay? Let's not get political. Let's just look at two men that are Americans, that are powerful people in our country, and I just want to look at the astrology without getting political, okay? So I want to, I'm not going to break down, read Biden's whole natal chart and, break all that kind of stuff down. I'm more so looking at health issues because both of these men are going to the doctor, okay? Trump had, kind of confused about Trump's yearly checkup because I was pretty sure that he already had a yearly checkup. So I don't think this is a yearly checkup for Trump, but Biden has announced that, he's starting his cancer treatments. So I wanted to look at him again as a man, all right? Like I said, I don't really want to get political. I just want to look at the astrology and see what it's saying. So the first thing that I notice on the chart is it looks like there is a cradle appearing on the chart. I also have a pretty big T-square for Biden. Okay, this is Biden's natal chart. On the inside, all the planets on the inside are Joe Biden's natal chart, the stars that he was born with. All the planets in green on the outside are the planets that are above our heads today. I'd say within the next hour or two. Should be legit with the planets that are transiting over top of our heads right now. So this is me looking at Joe Biden's natal chart, looking at what's transiting his natal stars, the stars that he was born with. Okay, so I do believe that this kind of has a cradle formation. So it's above the horizon. So if you have a cradle on your chart, it looks like a basket turned upside down. It can be in all different directions. It could be on its side. It can be on the bottom of the hemisphere. It can be above the hemisphere. So the hemisphere is that big black line in the middle of your chart. And, everything below everything below the AC and DC line on your chart, that is more of your private life, right? It's I am born, the first house. The second house, I value, I possess. The third house, I communicate, right? The fourth house, my home and family, right? Things that are more private to you that helps you develop as a person as you grow up. So below the horizon is self, right? I. And then above the horizon is more we the people, okay? My public persona. Me with relationships with other. Because once you go above that DC line from the 6th to the 7th house, the 7th house, you're going into the public life where you become we. We have a marriage. We have relationships. We have partnerships, right? How we work with others. And the 8th house is, sex, death, taxes, inheritance, other people's money, other people's things, your spouse's things, okay, is the 8th house. So that's where we get into we and your public persona. And then below is self, okay? I hope that makes sense. So basically, I know this is taking a long way to explain that cradle forming on the upper part of his public image his public career, his public hemisphere, is that he's sharing with the public a complex situation, right? Because we have the oppositions, we have the trines in there, and that it's a stressful situation, okay? And Biden has always had issues with communication. So if you look on his AC/DC line, it's ruled by the third degree. So when he was born at the third degree. How he greets the world, who is at the helm, is the AC line. Okay, who's driving the vehicle? Who's controlling the vessel? Right, the sun is what holds you as a vessel, and the AC line is your rising sign, and that's who's at the helm. That's who's driving. That's the driving force. How the world sees you and how you see the world, and it's at a third degree. So he becomes an excellent communicator, but he still struggles with it. And with the third degree is that he would always struggle with speaking. Speeches and speaking is not his strong suit, I would say. And then if you look over at the sixth house is your health, service, how you are of service to others, how you take care of small pets. And it has a lot to do with your everyday routines, your everyday environment. And it also has to do with your everyday regular health elements, the things that bother you the most, okay? And Taurus is ruling his sixth house. So that means that he has issues with speech, the aesthetic of his speech, the flow of and the energy of his tongue, his teeth, is all Taurus, okay? So he will always struggle with that. That's an everyday struggle for him through his entire life, okay? And it developed him as a person, okay? So having alternative ways to probably learn how to become a better speaker with Uranus in there is probably what he ended up doing to become to try to become a better speaker. But with that AC line being at the third degree and Taurus ruling that sixth house of your everyday health elements, your everyday routines, these would be medical things that would bother him all the time. And that has to do with the tongue, the throat, the larynx, has to do with the teeth and how the aesthetic of your voice. Right? So we have a lot of people that can sing beautifully. They're usually well placed. Okay. They're in good houses and they have good aspects to them. Okay. So let's keep moving on. It's also important, I believe, to look at that little box down at the bottom of your chart there that has, air, earth, water, and fire. It has cardinal, mutable, and fixed signs. So I would say, looking at this, that Joe Biden has a lot of, probably a lot of water, and a lot of fixed signs. I'd say majority of his planets, important planets, are water. He has a lot of water, so he has a depth to him. There is an emotional side to him. Again, I'm not getting political. I'm just reading this man's chart, okay? I'd rather have more water than no emotions at all, okay? So there is a deep emotion with this person. And with the fixed signs, if he didn't have all these fixed signs, I'd say that helps him stay grounded, right? Because the fixed signs can ground a person with that much water. So it's not like a perfect balance, but it's a good balance. So I would say that he is going into this cancer treatments quite emotionally, quite spiritually, but he's also quite realistic about his situation, okay? So we have his natal Pluto in transit with Mercury. So again, this is talking about health, dark subjects. It also is, subjects pertaining to death. I'm sure that he has talked to his close loved ones about death, okay? And the reality of it. So in his group, I'm sure that he is talking about, the grim reality of it. He has his natal Mars is in transit to Mars. So I'm going to tell you that they are positive. He is feeling positive, but at the same time, I think he's still realistic with that. So, I mean, this Mars on top of Mars, last time we saw Donald Trump, when Mars came around, it was on top of his Mars. So the natal Mars that Trump was born with, the Mars above our head, transited Trump's natal Mars a couple of months ago. And that was a really conflicting, a lot of conflict around him. So it can bring on either a boost of I don't know if I should say gusta, or it brings courage to face it. Okay. So he is finding the courage to face his treatments, I believe, with his Mars transiting his Mars. But I also have to be realistic that Mars is the planet of conflict. It is the god of war. So it can also bring on more conflict. Now, also, please keep in mind, Mars can represent the prostate in a way, because Mars is the ancient planet of Scorpio. Scorpio and Pluto were once originally ruled by Mars, okay? Mars rules your private parts, all right? Aries rules the face, the eye socket, the head, but he also is the ancient planet of Pluto. So that Pluto is your sex organs, okay? And the prostate is connected to around the rectum area and around above the testicles. So I would say that Mars is connected to prostate cancer specifically. I would definitely say that. I mean, I'm not an expert, but I'm going to hypothesize that Aries and Mars can represent prostate cancer, okay? It also rules the blood cells, the white blood cells, all right? And infection, fever, heat, and radiation is kind of hot, right? Fever, heat, inflammation, things that swell, things that can fester, all right? So that's all kind of Mars in there. And right now, Mars is directly on top of his natal Mars. So that can either bring on more swelling, more infection to the area, just more heat to the area. And that could also mean that he's getting ready to go under, radiation or chemo, which can bring on heat. So I'm going to go, looks like Juno is in his first house, so he has deep connections with his relationships with others. I would say especially his wife, having Juno in the first house. I'm not sure about his first wife. I'm not sure about their first marriage. I know he was devastated when his first wife died. I know that he lost his wife and daughter, were killed in a car accident because of an alcoholic hit his wife and killed his young toddler daughter. So a very sad situation, and he has Juno in the first house, so he identifies through his wife. And Juno, in a couple of days, probably the end of October, will be in transit over top of his natal Juno. So I would say his wife is really going to kind of come forward and take a role in his for him. Okay, definitely going to be involved in his cancer treatments. So if you look, Saturn and Neptune are in transit of his fourth house. Again, this can bring on chronic conditions within the home, in his private space, with his family. There is a chronic condition. There can be, maybe with Neptune there can be some confusion with the issues around treatments, medication, what is the best, hospital, things of that nature. I'm sure that they are talking about, and Saturn there is definitely a chronic condition. With Neptune in the fourth house, you can kind of feel isolated and stuck at home. Issues with feeling just kind of, not feeling well enough to go out, because Neptune can also, it rules your spirituality and how you're feeling mentally. All right. So he could feel a little bit trapped in his own home. His Jupiter is in trine with his natal Mercury. So there are people around him that are kind of like his cheerleaders. There are people around him that are optimistic. And then his natal Jupiter will be conjunct his Jupiter right now. So if you look, you can see his two Jupiters are kind of sitting on top of each other. That means that there's a conjunction there, which increases his faith about his health, and he's feeling positive about good fortune. But we should also keep in mind that Jupiter conjunct Jupiter like that can also, it is in the 8th house of transformation. So this can also bring on a huge transformation for the family, including his chronic health. The 8th house can be more terminal diseases and things of that nature. So, it is putting an emphasis there on his, Jupiter makes things bigger, it expands it. So it is putting more emphasis on his chronic health. Again, we are talking about a human being here. I am trying to be as respectful and as tactful as possible. I'm going to go over some special dates with all of you. I'm really not comfortable. Some of you have asked me to predict his death. I'm really not comfortable doing that. I'm just going to give you a couple of clues and hints and some dates that we should look forward to. Remember, this is a human being that we're talking about, and they are going through a pretty serious cancer treatment. So the other thing we should also consider is that his Uranus, his natal Uranus, is getting ready to be conjunct with transiting Uranus, transiting up in the sky right now. So that usually happens. Uranus is, when it's like this, you'd be like 83, 84 years old, and this would go over his legacy. That would be kind of next year. There would be an emphasis on his legacy. Now, I would say that the end of November, actually probably like November the 11th, his natal, November the 11th of 2025, not November next year. So around November the 11th, his natal Pluto is going to be square Venus. Now, I'm thinking that this might be a time where they might do a little bit of trying to get prepared at the house, maybe for him. Maybe they have to do maybe they just have to change and rearrange some furniture. Even with art, make the house more comfortable for him, maybe, I would say. Because Venus is like, your possessions, your home, your aesthetic, and the things that you surround yourself with, your possessions of things of that nature. So with it square there, it makes me feel like they might try to, get the house ready for him to do treatments at home or something like that. They just might need to rearrange things. Even with Taurus being ruled by Venus in the 5th house later in life, that can indicate that you've had to move things around in the house to feel more comfortable. Maybe you move your bedroom downstairs instead of taking the stairs all the time in older age, right? Can look at it like that. So I would say on November the 11th as well, his natal Saturn is with Mercury. So then this is discussions about getting older, right? Old age, getting up in age, and talking about possibly a chronic illness. Now, I would say probably April, May, end of April, May, June, and into July, I would say that we're going to see a massive change in his appearance, okay? I would say that around May 6th, it might become public knowledge that he looks very different. And it might shock some people, okay? Maybe he lost weight. I mean, we have to be realistic. He is dealing with possible cancer treatments. And everyone who has ever experienced a loved one like I have that has died from cancer, the treatments alone transform them. It does make them very sick. So I'm thinking around May 6th, there is this opposition to the sun. Mars is opposing the sun, entering the 5th, which, can be his health. He has Uranus square his north node at some point in there. And I just think that these can indicate in 2026, May 6th, 2026, May 8th, going into June, and even the end of April, he might look very different than the Joe Biden that everyone is used to seeing. So, there is going to be some type of transformation in his appearance, I believe. And then the end of February, there is going to be some drama, 2026. Some type of attack, possibly on his character, or, his Saturn is going to be square his sun. So that can also be, Saturn rules the body, Saturn rules chronic illness, and the sun rules him. So I'm not going to say that's when he's going to pass. I'm going to say that it could be a very difficult time for someone who's old and going through cancer treatments. So, end of February, his sun is going to be square, his Saturn, and that can be intense. Even in February 26th, end of February, it's going to be intense. So, I would just say that overall, my prayers are with him, and that this is going to definitely be a transformational time for him. In the meantime, we just got to keep praying, and like I said, I don't wish death upon anyone. Even if I don't like them, I don't wish death upon them. Okay, so let's go on to Trump real quick and just take a quick peek at his doctor appointment that was the other day. Okay, so the reason why I'm looking at both of them is because they both have had medical announcements. The White House made an announcement that Trump was having his yearly exam. Like I said, they mentioned that he had a yearly exam back in April, I believe. So there's a contradiction with him going to the doctor, which he has every right to go to the doctor. He's an older man. I wish the White House would just be a little bit more transparent and tell us the truth. But it doesn't matter who's in there. You're never going to get the truth, okay? So there is a lot of conspiracy around his health. So we're just going to look at his astrology real quick. Now, I'm not going to break down his whole astrology chart. I'm just going to pick out a couple of health aspects that I find kind of alarming, okay? As we know, Saturn and Neptune have been hanging out. They are a duo for a while now, and where it was transiting Biden, Saturn and Neptune in Joe Biden's chart, it was transiting his fourth house, which is saying, that there's chronic illness that's entered into his home at this point. For Trump, it's a little bit more scary than Biden because his Saturn and Neptune, okay, which Saturn is your health, okay, your body, your physical body, your DNA, your hair, skin, teeth, nails, all that. Well, it's getting ready to enter into his 8th house of death, okay? On the doorway between Aries and Pisces there. So the thing with Trump, what I see is probably being a problem for him. His everyday chronic illnesses, his everyday ailments that bother him is going to be in the 5th house. Or 6th house, I'm sorry, in the 6th house, right below the DC line. That's being ruled by Aquarius. So that's his ankles and his circulatory system, okay? Fluid retention in the legs. And it also, Aquarius, look at it. It's the water bearer, okay? Even the sign of Aquarius is moving forward. So that's why Aquarius rules the ankles, okay? And parts of the legs, because it is a forward moving sign. So it rules in medical astrology. It rules the ankles and the circulatory system. It also is an indication that there's a lot of talk and communication around his everyday health issues. Okay, so he is going to have issues with his ankles and circulation, possibly blood clots, and just edema in the legs. In his 8th house of, where we see more chronic illness, is being ruled by Pisces. And Aries is in there too. So with Saturn and Neptune, the duo team, going in, getting ready to really get into that 8th house of his, okay? It's not the best. It's not the best. And Pluto is right on the doorway of his health down at the bottom there. And Pluto is getting ready to go into his 5th house of health. So, and Pluto is the planet of death and transformation. So I would say, as Pluto moves extremely slow. So I'm not saying that, please don't get this twisted. I'm not saying Trump is going to die tomorrow. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that as Pluto moves in to his 5th house, which will take time, okay, he is going to have more transformative health issues with circulation and the fluid in his ankles, okay? And as Neptune, the team duo up there of Neptune and Saturn hanging out together, he could be easily misdiagnosed with a chronic illness, which is why I wish that the White House would be a little bit more transparent. Because honestly, he could get a misdiagnosis of a serious chronic condition with Saturn going over that, 8th house of death there in transformation. Of course, he's not my favorite person, but I don't wish death upon anyone. I know that he's got grandchildren and kids. I don't want him to be suffering. All right. So, I do think that, he is at risk for a chronic misdiagnosis or confusion with a diagnosis with him. Because, he really does put on this persona that he's super, super healthy. But in reality, I don't think that he is as healthy as he's portraying to the rest of the world. Now, don't get all your panties in a bunch and start leaving all these political freaking comments in my section below, in my comment section. I really don't care. If you're going to get political, I'm just going to delete your shit anyway, okay? I really don't care for this man. I don't, all right? But I don't want to see him suffering, and I don't want to see his family sad either, because he could be really sick, okay? I think that with Saturn going into the house of death and transformation, that's alarming as it is anyway. Now, again, these planets move very slow. So this could be something that's like kind of in the background that is least suspected, and then it comes forward, right? So there could be this like hidden a hidden illness or a hidden complication to what he's dealing with. And it could really make him sick because it's in a house that represents chronic illness. Remember, the 5th house is like your everyday elements, your everyday routine, and the health conditions that bother you on a daily basis. So we already know circulation in his ankles are bothering him on a daily basis. However, when you get Saturn and Neptune transiting that going into the 8th house of death and transformation, and where we find more chronic, serious illnesses, that's a little alarming to me, okay? So I would say, he needs to get a couple of opinions and maybe not just stick to one doctor all the time, which I don't know if that's possible in the White House. They probably just have one secret doctor that follows them around everywhere, probably. And it's kind of sucks because he probably can't go out and get a second opinion because he's the president and he can't really get around. But I would say there could be confusion with the diagnosis that he has. And with Saturn entering that 8th house of death, I mean, it's not the best situation. One, because Saturn would want you to be more disciplined, okay? He would want you to be more disciplined about your chronic condition or your chronic health condition. And let's be honest, he's getting in there with the 8th house of death, which rules where, things can be hidden, chronic illness, death and transformation, a chronic illness that transforms your life, okay? He probably is being told that he needs to change his diet. He is probably being told, that he has to be more disciplined with a diet or more disciplined with this chronic condition that he has. I do believe he has a chronic condition. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not a doctor. This is just my own personal opinion, looking at the astrology, how the planets talk to us. Now with Pisces there, he could be hospitalized. He could be given IVs, okay? And he could have issues with his blood flow, because Aries rules blood, Aries rules infection, Aries rules cancer, chronic illnesses such as that, and Aries is connected to Mars. That is the ancient planet of Pluto and the ancient planet of Scorpio. Okay, so before Pluto was invented, this house was ruled by Mars, and Aries is in there, and it does rule the sex organs and things of that nature, inflammation around these areas. Okay, same thing with Joe Biden. Inflammation around the sex organs, right? So, and it could be something with the cells in the blood. So Aries rules the head, the face, the eye socket, your head. So this also could be him feeling, with Saturn kind of getting close in there. It could represent him feeling the old age is closing in on the house of death and transformation, because Saturn is connected to Kronos, okay, the god of Father Time. And Father Time is, closing in on his 8th house of death. So, he could be being told that he can't, that he needs to probably watch his diet and, be more healthy and be more disciplined with his health, and that he has to probably take medication more, and that he has to, he might be feeling a little emotional about the fact that, he's coming to terms with old age, and the frailty of it could emotionally play a role there with him. At the end of the matter, you're self-undoing, you're self-unfolding. He does have Pluto in there, and Pluto can rule a chronic illness, and it's with Leo, and Leo rules the heart. Okay, Leo rules the ventricles in the heart, how the blood pumps through the heart. So, I'm sure he has a chronic illness with his heart, either his heart or his chronic illness with his back. And he could be very emotional about issues with his heart. That's the 12th house is your self-undoing, your self-unfolding. It is a very spiritual house. But we're looking at chronic illness right now, and that is what that house means. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to pass away tomorrow. That's not what I'm saying. I personally don't care for this man, but I know a lot of you guys do. I don't want to see him being misdiagnosed. I don't want to see something hidden with his health. A chronic illness. Pluto can rule something that's more chronic and something that's hidden, and it's in the 12th house. So, I do feel like he could be a victim of wrong information or misdiagnosis. So, like I said, I don't particularly care for him, but, I know that he's got grandchildren, and that, Biden has grandchildren, and, I don't want to see either one of these men suffer. To be honest with you, I don't want to see either one of them suffer, okay? So, in the meantime, just keep praying for our country. Pray for peace in our country. We need peace. We are the United States of America. We are not the divided states of America. We are neighbors. Even though we are red states and blue states, we are neighbors. And at the end of the day, we cannot remove the human element of our neighbors. The human element is being ignored. And just because someone doesn't believe in the MAGA values or the MAGA way doesn't mean they're automatically evil or not a patriot. All right, blessings to you all. Take care of one another. Be kind to one another. Blessed be. Bye-bye.